Hi, I'm Matt Hatton from Transformer Insights, and we are here at the Things Conference talking all things IoT and LoRaWAN. I'm joined by Reinhard Bischoff. Sorry, stumbled over that a moment, but I've been doing this for 3 hours. From Decentlab. Reinhard, welcome. Can you tell me a little bit about you and your organization and what you do?
Okay, I'm from Decentlab. I'm one of the founders. Decentlab was founded in 2008, and our mission is having wireless, battery-operated devices, and so we have about 40 different devices for LoRaWAN.
Okay, great. Now, you are doing a keynote speech at 3:30 today, I think, so tune in at home if you can. What are you going to be talking about?
I will talk about flood monitoring, water level in general, and then also some tiny bits on water quality. So the water life cycle is one of our key use cases where we have scaled to many critical and relevant applications. I will show how it's looking in the field, what you have to pay attention, and how it's working and how we get the value back.
Okay. And this is water levels, you're thinking about rivers and lakes and maybe canals. We're here in Amsterdam. That's a popular topic of conversation here, I'm sure. These kinds of, so it's environmental monitoring essentially, or are you also looking at working with utilities? How does it work?
Yeah, so flood monitoring is in the environment, or like the small canals, the river, and especially in cities where you have like heavy rain events can have high damage, and you want to manage retention basins and so on. But in more general, we're also very focused on the groundwater monitoring. So in the boreholes, they can be like here only a few meters or almost nothing, or we have in Africa plantations or so where it's 200 meters deep. So water is in our DNA to measure this. But yeah, flood is a big thing, and then it was logic to go to level monitoring for groundwater and wells.
Okay, and you brought some toys with you. Always interested to see these. What have you got here?
So what we got here is both measure the level of the water, but in different ways. So sometimes, we have here, this is a top-down measurement of the level. It measures from here to the water surface, and so we can have for flood monitoring. That's very good. And the other one, we also measure the water level, but this time we measure not top-down, but we submerge the pressure sensor head. Yeah. So like a diving watch, you say how much water is above the sensor head. And so you can do that into the ground in a thin tube, and so you can go way below ground, or in some certain rivers this is more suitable. And that means Decentlab, however you want or need to measure the level, sometimes this is the idle option, sometimes that is the idle, and we have even two more variants. So this is about, there's not one device for all the same use case.
Okay, so this one might be submerged in a body of water, or it might be put into the ground to measure groundwater. Either of those kinds of use cases, right?
Yes, correct. Yeah. So this is really for underground or for tank. We do tank level monitoring as well. So you see, we have huge variety of use cases, and this is for environmental rivers and canals mostly, or the wastewater where you don't want to have a pressure sensor.
And agriculture use cases, is that what it mostly is, or is it more environmental monitoring for government and that kind of organisation?
It started to be with authorities and environmental organizations. So we have the federal authorities who are obliged by law to conduct that. Previously it was done with heavy equipment or kind of power intense, expensive, and so this is the new generation we do for them. And also where water is very expensive, or having the water table very low, and we want to monitor that the pumps do not dry run. Agriculture sector is also now taking up this. So it's getting more and more now agriculture as well.
Interesting. And you mentioned a couple of the water examples, and you say water's in the DNA. Other sensor devices covering other areas, or is the focus exclusively on this water area?
No, we do some water quality to add,
Okay.
but the other sensors we have about 40 of them, is then more for air quality monitor, like particulate matter and microclimate and soil moisture. Soil moisture again in agriculture use cases. We have a bunch of many of them, but water is one of our main activities.
Okay, and that's what you're talking about in your presentation at 3:30 specifically. Are there any particular areas that you'll be covering off on that people ought to tune in to hear about? Just how this works? Is that the principle of what you're talking about?
Yes, it is how it works and how it looks in the field, because the device is just a starting point, but how you roll out, how you have to mount them, how you get proper measurements, what are the challenges, because we are not indoors, we are outdoors, so we are a harsh environment, we have all kind of impact, and how we can cope with that, or where we have to pay attention beside like the devices. That's what you will see in the presentation.
Okay, good stuff. Now we're here at a LoRaWAN show. Was there any alternative technology that you might have thought about for using in these devices, or was it always going to be a LoRaWAN decision?
With LoRaWAN, we have this very low power and this very focused on these use cases. For sure, there are some other connectivity technologies, and we as a company, we're always looking. There's pros and cons on all these different connectivities. Also, satellite IoT technology will come up when it's very rural. This is something like with Lacuna or other the other satellite IoT. So for us, it's a technology, and this enables us to conduct the measurements. And we always have the eyes open and look. Yeah. And yeah, sometimes this fits, like with the sensors, sometimes it's the same with the connectivity. Not everywhere, for everything, there's one technology. So you have to be agnostic and find the good solution and the reliability.
And satellite actually must be pretty interesting for you, because some of these devices must be located in pretty remote spots, right? So are you hopeful about that? How do you see that evolving?
Yeah, I see. I'm in contact with the satellite IoT networks. We don't have them yet, but but we are observing and looking into it, how and learn. I see there for sure an idea or enablement for new cases, and it will complement the technology or the wireless connectivity. Sure.
Completely. You and I were here. Excuse me. You and I were here doing exactly the same thing in a slightly different part of the building, but doing basically the same thing 2.5 years ago. How do you see things have changed in the last 2.5 years? I mean, we've had COVID, we've had a few other headwinds, there's been some interesting dynamics in the market. How do you see things have changed in that intervening time?
I think there's a lot of positive changes. The technology majored, but also like the use case majored. So it's not new. We can now prove larger deployments, and the customers, we have many of them, they validated, and the return of the investment or the value in it is way stronger, and that's from a company side very good. So we're working hard, but also now, yeah, you see that you do critical and relevant deployments, which helps for prevent floods. We can now show that we were able to prevent things, or they could save money in building new retention basins because they were not needed. And so, yeah, it became way more mature and technical and industrial way. Yeah, it was new or maybe not yet proven. It was just a hype. Yeah. Now it's proven there's the real value of these things.
Absolutely. The interesting thing for me is we were maybe talking a lot more about technology 2.5 years ago, and now we're talking much more about use cases and how it's been actually deployed in the real world, which is fascinating to watch, right?
Sure, yeah. But we also found out things which don't work. Sometimes more on a business case. Yeah. You have to find your ways, and so yeah, we are way more now like focused and see things, and so can better estimate the outcome, or yeah, that's
fantastic. Reinhard, thank you very much. Thanks for your time. So I'm calling it a day. Reinhard Bischoff of Decentlab. Great to speak to you. I'm calling it a day. I'm handing over to James Blackman of Enterprise IoT Insights. Thank you for paying attention. We'll be back, or rather, he'll be back in about 5 minutes. Thank you.